If you played games in the late 90s, then you know the absolute terror of draw distance. The original PlayStation was a revolutionary console, but it had a glaring weakness. It struggled to render regular 3D environments. If you tried to build a whole city, the hardware would choke, resulting in awful pop-in where buildings would just magically snap into the existence right in front of your face. For example, we have a game like Tomb Raider, which is a 3D platforming game, but when you use the camera or the camera moves, you can see the objects render in real time. You can see the cut-ins of objects, you can see them popping in the distance. This is very similar to the game Silent Hill, but they had a very clever trick. Now, most of the horror games from that era, like Resident Evil is a great example, bypass the problem completely. They used a pre-rendered 2D painting for the backgrounds and just slapped 3D character models on top of them. It was beautiful, but it meant that the camera was stuck in one place. In 1999, a group of misfits at Konami decided that they wanted a fully 3D world. They wanted the camera to swoop, to pan, to follow the player dynamically. There was one massive problem though. The PlayStation simply could not handle it. The town of Silent Hill was going to look like a glitchy, popping in mess. So what did they do? They didn't fix the draw distance, they hid it. And in doing so, they accidentally created one of the most terrifying atmospheres in the history of gaming. To understand Silent Hill, you have to understand the people who made it. In the late 90s, Konami saw a massive financial success with Capcom's Resident Evil, and they wanted a piece of the pie. They assembled a team to make a Hollywood-style horror game that would appeal to an American audience. But Team Silent Hill wasn't Konami's A-team. In fact, it was largely made up of staff whose previous projects had failed or developers who were on the verge of quitting the company altogether. They were basically the group of misfit toys. Because management eventually lost faith in them and stopped paying close attention, Team Silent quickly threw out the corporate mandate. Instead of Hollywood action and B-movie zombies, they turned to psychological horror. Inspired by David Lynch, Stephen King, and the fear of the unknown. But they still had to build this town, Silent Hill, on PlayStation 1. Because the team committed to real-time 3D environments, and the PlayStation 1 could only render a few feet in front of the protagonist, if they released the game as is, the player would just see an empty black void swallowing the town. Their solution was an absolute masterclass in turning the bug into the feature. They blanketed the entire town in thick, oppressive fog. The fog wasn't just a stylistic choice, it was a literal curtain hiding the edge of the PlayStation 1's rendering capabilities. And when the game transitions to the other world, they swap the fog for pure, suffocating darkness, giving Harry but nothing but a weak pocket flashlight. This hardware limitation basically changed how horror worked. In most games, fear comes from what you see, but in Silent Hill, the fear comes from what you can't see. The fog created an intense feeling of claustrophobia in a wide open town. Your brain fills the gray void with whatever horrors are far worse than what the PlayStation 1 could actually render. But the band of misfit toys at Team Silent, they had another problem. If the player can't see the monsters until they're 3 feet away, how do they avoid getting unfairly killed? Enter Akira Yamaoka, the game's legendary sound designer and composer. Because the visual draw distance was ruined, Yamaoka had to rely on audio draw distance. The team gave Harry a broken pocket radio that emits a burst of harsh grinding static whenever a monster is nearby. This is pure, brilliant, elegant game design born out of hardware constraints. The radio tells you something is out there, hunting you, but the fog refuses to show you where it is. It forces you to stop, spin, and panic as the static gets louder and louder and louder, and if the player turns, they're a paranoid wreck. When the PlayStation 2 came out, Konami had the processing power to render the entire town of Silent Hill perfectly. They didn't need the fog anymore. But by then, the fog wasn't just a technical workaround. It was Silent Hill. And with all of this, Team Silent proved that you don't need the most powerful hardware to create a masterpiece. Sometimes the things holding you back are exactly what make you brilliant. If you want to see more deep dives into the code and history of retro games, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, well, stay out of the fog and I hope you have a good one.